The nurse said, "Get your daughter away from Paul. He's bad news."
Murders, mysteries, unexplained stories, and our family's crazy opinions on them all. Join us now. The Family School of Thought is in session.
Hey, everybody. Hope everybody has had a great week. Thanks for joining us again this week. It's a little rainy and chilly here right now. How's it in Portland?
I was just telling Mom off air that it's been very temperamental for the past week. For an hour, it'll be sunny and 60 and really nice and warm. And then the next hour, it is freezing cold, downpour rain for an hour. And then it'll be sunny for another hour. And then it'll downpour again for another hour. So it's just literally for a week. It hasn't picked a condition yet.
Yeah.
That's
Saturday, it was in the 80s. It was beautiful. Then Sunday, it got cold. Monday, we got snow. Then yesterday, it was kind of nice. And then today's been cold.
Tomorrow it's supposed to be in almost 80. So.
Yeah. I was really hoping we'd get a big snowstorm since we're going to Florida.
They can get the snowstorm after we get on the plane and in the air.
It would be fun to leave in the middle of a snowstorm.
Would it? Yeah.
No, don't fly out in the middle of a snowstorm.
No.
I think it would be
many times.
I remember being stuck up in the air trying to fly into Florida because there was hurricane weather. Or, I'm sure it wasn't a hurricane, but it was such bad weather that we couldn't land. It wasn't safe for us to land. So we were just taxiing up in the air.
That happened to us last time we went. I think it was fog, but
I know ours, it was during hurricane season. So it was hurricane-y weather-ish, or maybe a tornado. I can't remember. It was a long time ago.
I know I've told you guys my story about landing in Detroit in the snowstorm and we went off the runway.
Yeah.
The plane did.
Yeah.
This wasn't, well, now that you guys are going to Florida, it is still pertinent, but not to deal with a snowstorm. But I always remember the time we flew down to Florida and literally as we're going down to land, the pilot gets over the intercom and is like, "Hey, so we calculated the distance of the runway and it's too short. So we're going to have to do a really, really quick landing." It wasn't, you were there.
Okay.
You were with us.
I don't remember this.
And he's like, "We're going to have to stop really, really quickly. You might have to brace for impact." And we're just like, what?
That was awesome. He's like, "Yeah, we miscalculated the runway." And
was it an April Fool's joke?
No, we actually had to stop. We literally slammed on the brakes as soon as we hit the tarmac.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, that was in
that was when we were on our cruise.
No, that was.
I don't know.
No, that for sure was us flying down to Florida. It might have been the trip that we went on cruise. But it was us flying to Florida.
Hi, gorgeous.
How's my boy? What's that in your mouth? Oh. Yeah, I remember that. That was, you were like, "What did he just say?"
What did he just? We're gonna crash. And he did it so calmly too. He was like, "Yeah, we calculated it, but we were wrong. So
So we're gonna have to crash land."
And we landed I remember we landed at an airport that you just got off on the tarmac. They just opened the
It was a steps, but it was almost a ladder getting up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, now get off.
I got lots of flying stories, but anyways, let's get on with the show. Jesse, do you got some history facts for us?
I got some unexplained mystery history facts. Okay. I got a couple of them today. Okay. Both of them are dealing with art, I guess, if you want to call it. But one is the death of Edgar Allan Poe. He's a well-known author. known for his poem, The Raven. I think that's his most well-known poem, but short stories, poetry. Most of his work is very dark and mysterious. So, the themes are very dark and mysterious. Unfortunately, his fiction work was not the only aspect of his life affected by mysterious circumstances. The writer died at the age of 40 on October 7th, 1849 in Baltimore, Maryland, and only a few strange details were gathered regarding his passing. 4 days before his death, he was found stumbling around Baltimore in a delirious state and wearing someone else's clothing. Random passerbyers reported his condition, and he was taken to Washington Medical College, where he eventually died. Records show that he repeatedly was yelling the name Reynolds just before his death. There is no medical records or death certificates regarding his passing, and no definitive cause of death was determined, making the famed writer's death as strange and as dark as his own stories. So did he really die?
That's a good question. If there's no death records.
I thought that he dreamt his death, and then it happened exactly the way.
Is that the same one? Yeah. I feel like you're right on that one. I don't know 100%. Hold on.
It was a weird death. I remember that. And it seems like he had dreamt it, and then it happened exactly the way he dreamt it.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that one. But the other fact that I have is Mona Lisa's smile. Cassie, maybe you know this, because you, out of the four of us, are the only one that has been to Paris and been in front of Mona Lisa. So I don't know if you'll know this or not, but just like to point that out.
Could you touch Mona Lisa?
No, because it's behind glass. It's been stolen so many times that it's literally behind glass, behind like a barrier. You can't even get close to it.
And it's in like its own like temperatures, like zone and everything too. Yeah, it's protected.
Oh, so like when you see that on TV, that's for real.
Oh, it's for real. Like they're not that you can't get anywhere near it.
Because we've seen a lot of paintings, and
it's
amazing that you could just go up and touch it.
Well,
but I also think like Mona Lisa doesn't travel. The paintings that we see, they go on tour and.
But also, I mean, this is off topic, but to get to that point, like nowadays, most paintings are behind a protective layer of glass, and we know this now because of that like stunt that got pulled like a year ago where people threw tomato sauce on Van Gogh's painting.
Yeah.
They are covered so that when stuff like that happens,
and that's been happening.
It doesn't ruin paintings.
Like the kid that colored all over one of the sculptures. I can't remember where.
That one. That's on the parents, but
hopefully you can wash it off.
Most famous paintings are behind a barrier now.
Okay,
back to Mona Lisa.
Back to Mona Lisa. So Mona Lisa is perhaps one of the most famed Renaissance painter to have ever held, or it's by one of the most famed Renaissance painters, who has ever held a brush. It's Leonardo da Vinci. And it is pretty well known that he produced like a surprisingly few amount of like number of paintings in his career. But with many experts placing the number of pieces definitively painted by him at just 15 over the entire of his 50-year career. So 15, 1-5. That's not a lot.
Well, you got to think about it. Like the Sistine Chapel, he did Sistine Chapel.
Yeah,
like that probably took 20 years.
Yeah,
that's one.
Are you saying we don't appreciate or we appreciate him too much?
She's saying that like he's probably one of the most famous painters in existence, and he has
really
very few
pieces,
projects.
Yeah. So, he had
sure that ceiling took him a long time.
Oh, I'm sure, but he had
needed to rest a while.
15 pieces, 15 pieces, and he had a career of 50 years.
Right.
So, so I mean, I agree though. Yeah. So, but I also think maybe that's why his stuff is so famous, because it's very little, like there's not very much of it. So any discovery of previously unknown Da Vinci paintings then is both intensely scrutinized and wildly important. Previously known as the Isleworth Mona Lisa, but christened the earlier Mona Lisa by its current owners, one portrait is seemingly an early iteration of the painter's most famed work, the Mona Lisa, which many experts claimed he painted in dribs and drabs over a course of decades, visibly similar to the Mona Lisa and its more famous counterpart. The Isleworth Mona Lisa depicts a model at a younger age and is so similar to the Mona Lisa that numerous reputable art organizations have cautiously confirmed that the painter's authenticity was as a Da Vinci original. So basically, he painted the Isleworth Mona Lisa first when she was younger, and then did Mona Lisa later on. However, nonetheless, skeptics are still abound, with many considering the Isle Mona Lisa to be nothing more than a counterfeit. So it didn't give too much information. I don't know when the Isleworth Mona Lisa is said to have been painted, but clearly it's supposed to have been before the Mona Lisa. So I don't know. You would think that if it was a counterfeit, that
then why would somebody else repaint it?
Right. But I don't, no, if it was a counterfeit, you would think that
they would change it.
It would have
or make
been,
it look.
Yeah, right.
Make it look more like exactly like it.
So I don't know. Or it would have been discovered, before, or, dated, or I don't know. So I say, I'm sure, because he's only been, definitively has 15 well-known projects, but any artist or any person that has worked on any kind of thing, you usually do a rough draft, or you work on other projects that nobody really sees and it's not meant for anybody but yourself. So I could see it too.
Yeah, me too.
Even it just being like a rough draft, like many artists back in that time would basically do a rough sketch drawing and then like paint that and then go back and do another painting that's like for the actual buyer.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I could see it.
Yeah, me too. I can't understand why somebody would think that it as a counterfeit if he really did.
Well, it's the sale aspect of it. It's the sale aspect of someone just finding something and being like, wow, this looks exactly like the Mona Lisa. Right. So this must be a Leonardo da Vinci original kind of thing.
Right. Or it's like
you
people when they forge celebrities' signatures and stuff.
Yeah.
And then you take it to like an auction house, or you take it to like a antique store or whatever, and try to sell it. It's not worth the same as the real signature. It's not worth anything,
Right.
So that's the debate, is whether or not it is real, because
it could be worth,
somebody could have forged it by now.
Yeah. It could be worth nothing, or it could be worth like billions or like worthless, or
priceless.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Priceless.
Yeah. So worthless or priceless. So there you go. Those are my history unexplained mystery facts for the day.
Interesting.
Also, though, a fun fact. Did you guys, this is just off my own little, like, kind of, for at work today, I kind of heard this. But April is the deadliest month in history. I don't know if you guys knew that. And specifically today has a high, April 19th is today. It has a high, like, death rate, I guess, but today is the anniversary for Oklahoma City bombing. But there's a lot of things that happened specifically on today. And mostly like, Columbine, Oklahoma City bombing, Waco. There's a whole list of things that they all happened in April.
but not on the 19th. Just
No,
on
not
April.
not on the 19th.
April.
Oh, the Boston Marathon Massacre was in April. You know what it is? I think it's the Aries, the Aries sign. People are angry and active.
Huh.
April's the Aries month.
Well, and April's such a depressing month because it
If you
just
believe
rained.
in zodiac sign,
Well, but it's also a dreary month.
Also,
Rain.
I found out today too. Today is April 19th is Hitler's birthday. So
Oh, great.
I don't know.
Well, there you go. That's why.
Yeah.
Oh, we should just skip April altogether.
I'm sure Matt would like that.
Yeah.
All April birthdays.
Matt, did you know that you were born in the most angriest month?
Deadliest month.
Deadliest.
Yeah. But yeah, supposedly, and I kind of Googled it, and I was trying to prepare for tonight, and I just never got around to finishing that. But there's a lot of Google articles out there that April is the deadliest month, and specifically April 19th is like a bad day for death.
Interesting.
That's craziness.
There you go. So there's some non-confirmed Jesse facts. Entertainment purposes only.
We'll expect more information tomorrow night. A preview.
And April's not over, so
Yeah. I'll look into that some more. But I
haven't killed anybody yet this month.
Well, if you think about it, actually, now that you say that, we've had in the U.S. we've had in this month a string of people shooting random people on their doorsteps, within the last 2 weeks.
Pulling into a driveway, going up to the wrong door,
don't
getting
turn
into
around
somebody else's car by accident.
That is now that you say that is I was thinking it's so strange that we're here. There was something else, 2 cheerleaders got shot in Texas because they accidentally got in the wrong car.
They got into the wrong car, which I've done that before. I got into the car and I didn't realize it until my car.
I did that the other day. I went up to a white car.
No, I literally sat in the driver's seat of somebody else's car and couldn't figure out why my keys wouldn't work and why I had a Mountain Dew in the car because I don't drink Mountain Dew. And then it dawned on me, this was years and years ago, but it dawned on me, I'm like, I don't drink Mountain Dew. This is not my car.
I just literally did that, and I'm trying to get my key to open this door and start the car. I'm going, oh my gosh, I'm in the wrong car. I jumped out. I went, oh my gosh. I opened the door.
Now you got to be careful about that because people might shoot you for.
Or just going picking up your brother and sister at
just trying to pick up your brother and sister.
That just makes me sick.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
I mean, I just can't believe all of the shootings just within the last 3 nights. Yeah. Every night on the news, there's a new shooting.
It's April.
Apparently.
It's Aries.
It's April, apparently.
I don't know, but it's craziness. Our world has just become unacceptable. That's for sure.
Agreed. It is unacceptable.
Cass, maybe you could cheer us up with
don't depress us because it's April.
Well, here's the thing. I do have a song that I don't find to be creepy or sad, but it depends on where you fall on a scale.
Is it creepy or is it cute?
No, yes, sort of. I don't know. It's hard to explain this one. Why I think it's actually very lovely song kind of thing. I don't know. But so this is the song "Slide" by Goo Goo Dolls. Jess, you know it? Okay.
Yeah, I know it.
I probably won't know
so this one, it came out in the 90s.
Yeah.
And it's very popular. It's very popular as a romance song, just sing to your lover.
I thought about it that way, but sure.
But that's the thing. That's the thing is that it is, and I think it's very lovely that how the main or the artist wrote this song. But this song is actually about teen pregnancy and abortion. And it is about how the narrator of the song, the main singer of Goo Goo Dolls, is telling his girlfriend, or basically saying, you know, I'll do anything you want to make you feel complete. So he is saying, you know, whether you get an abortion or whether we keep this baby, it's your decision. You get to decide what we do after, like, you get to decide what we do in this relationship. And not many people know that it is about abortion, but it has an entire verse that says, "Don't you love the life you killed? The priest is on the phone. Your father hit the wall, and your ma disowned you." So this is about a young girl who is finding out that she's pregnant, and she's debating whether she should get an abortion and be able to go on and live her life, or have to be stuck in their hometown and get married to the young boy that impregnated her.
Yeah. So
and
I was going to say, go ahead.
And the narrator is basically saying it's your choice, which I think that's really lovely. Good. I think it's really lovely that he's saying it. You know, yes. You get to choose.
Yeah, I never thought of it as a love song, I guess. And that, like, that the lyrics that you just read out, that's what I remember most about the song.
Really? I don't. This is always the part that I miss, because whenever I think of this song, I always think of the line where he's like, "Do you want to get married?" But then the next line is him saying, "Or do you want to run away?" So it's literally him saying, "Do you want to get married and have this baby, or do you want to run away and get an abortion?"
Yeah. Yeah, I never thought of it as a love song, but I like the song. It's a good song.
I guess I've always seen people use it as a love song. It's in, like, I feel like it's in quite a few teen rom-com movies, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah. Especially from that era, yeah.
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 But there you go. This one's not super creepy to me. If you're a pro-lifer, you probably fucking hate this song, but I think it's great.
I like Hey There, Delilah. I still think it's a great song. And I think it's romantic that he wrote a song that he fantasized about this girl. They didn't even know.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Dee, you're up this week. I know you got an exciting story for us.
I do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Now, where do I begin? Because it's a crazy story. It's about Paul Murdaugh.
Yeah.
And his family, Alex Murdaugh, Maggie, and his brother, Buddy. And so it all began, and it raveled down because of this incident. Their dynasty, what we want to call, they call a dynasty, but 19-year-old on February 23rd, 2019, Mallory Beach and 5 of her friends went with Paul on a boat ride to go to an oyster roast. And during the trip, or on the way to the trip, they stopped at a gas station. Paul Murdaugh, or Murdaugh, he became quite the drinker, and he couldn't handle his liquor. But I've kind of got it sporadic, so I might be going back and forth because there's so much
story.
There is so much to the story.
So much to it,
and it just, you got to go back, and then you got to go forth, and to get it all in. But the story is about Mallory Beach. The whole incident come out because of Mallory Beach. And they got into a boating accident because Paul was so drunk that he went, they went, like I said, they stopped at a party store, gas station. He stopped, got liquor. All 6 of them, and now I've got to find all of my kids and people. it was okay. So Paul and Paul, Morgan were dating, and then Mallory and Anthony Cook were dating, and Miley and Connor were dating. They all grew up together. Anthony and Paul were best buddies, and they did everything together as boys. They went hunting. Of course, Paul's family had numerous homes, and they had a house on over 1,000 acres, and it had fishing and hunting and you name it, it had it. And so Paul and Anthony spent a lot of time on that property doing all kinds of, boy stuff. And then they partied, and Anthony was quite the partier also. And then Morgan and Morgan and Paul got in junior high. They were in science class or in a class together, and she always felt out of place when she was growing up and in school. And she met Paul in that class, and they started dating. And then Mallory and Morgan began pre-K together. And, it's just funny because the way that these girls talked, Miley had said that she was shy and kind of off on her to herself, and Mallory was this outgoing firecracker little girl, and she come up to her in class and said that Miley was pretty, and they became best friends for life. And so they were all together, and whatever one was doing, they were all together. They knew that they were going to be going out with. If Anthony was hanging with Paul, he knew he was going to be hanging with Mallory. If they were, if it was Mallory and Miley, they knew that Anthony knew that Connor would be in the picture. If Morgan came into the picture, then they knew that Paul would be with them. Or if Anthony and Paul were doing something, all three of the girls would be there. Because the three girls ended up going to school together and becoming best friends, and did everything together. It was like the three amigos. They said that it was the three M's because they pumped each other up and did all kinds of stuff. But so they all, Paul wanted to go to this party, and then Mallory wanted to go with a bunch of friends. She had asked Anthony to go to this oyster roast, and he said, he was adamant. He said, "No, I don't want to go. It's too cold." And the oyster roast they always do that in the fall, when all the oysters are, I guess, at the best season. But he said no, but he said that Mallory batted her eyes, and he couldn't tell her no because she had those puppy dog eyes. And so he ended up going. Well, then Connor and Miley were going. And so all of them decided that they were going. And Paul, at this time, had an on and off relationship with Morgan. And one day they were together, one day they weren't. Miley and Mallory were distraught because of the relationship, because Mallory was so much in love with Paul and his personality, and I guess he had this wonderful personality, and they did well, but his parents enabled him by giving him access to liquor. So they would block off streets, have parties in every summer, and it was not uncommon for them to, Paul would take them to the law firm, and they would go in the back doors, and they had access to alcohol, and they were 14 to 16 years of age. So all of the employees' kids had access to alcohol at such an early age. And before Paul started drinking, he was this bubbly, contagious, funny person, and everybody loved him. He had, many friends. He, was very outgoing. It was said that he had a nanny, housekeeper. She was, I guess, not just a nanny, but she was their housekeeper. And her name was Gloria Statterfield. And she pretty much raised Paul. He was 2 years of age, and it was said that Maggie, which is Paul's mom, doted on his older brother, and that no matter what he did, it rocked. And so Gloria pretty much stayed by his side, did everything for him, and Paul came to love her as his mother because she did everything for him, and she stood by his side no matter what it was, and encouraged him to do whatever he needed to do. And so during this time, Morgan, they were fighting back and forth, and Gloria said, it's a do or die situation. You're either going to love him for who he is or you're not. And so when Paul called and said, all of your friends are coming to this oyster roast, she did not want to go, because their relationship became toxic and abusive. And they became friends in junior high, and they dated throughout their schooling. And during this time, she wasn't from Beaufort, or actually it was it Hamilton? I need a state. I'll get back to that. But Mallory's family wasn't from there. They were from New York or Long Island, and they came there. It didn't say why they come, or her mother was a nurse in a prison, so I'm assuming it would be work, and his dad was an architect. Or her dad was. And so she always wanted to be the person that Paul's mom and dad, Alex and Maggie, wanted her to be. She wasn't used to that kind of a life. She said that she had never seen her parents or anybody else drunk, that she was never around that much alcohol, and going around Paul's family, it was like an everyday occurrence. It was never, just a one day a month thing. It was an everyday holiday party, drinking, access to all kinds of liquor, and Maggie encouraged them to drink. And it's kind of sad because you're 14 and 16, between 14 and 16, it's shouldn't be encouraged, but it was. And so she said, okay, she didn't want to go with Paul, but she wanted to go because Mallory and Morgan were going, and she wanted to spend some time with her best friends. So they went, and they all were drinking because Paul had stopped at the gas station on the way, used his brother's ID, older brother, and they got a bunch of liquor. They were drinking on the boat. They had a cooler on the back of the boat. And then when they got to the oyster roast, they left the cooler on the boat so they would go back and forth to the boat and get their liquor and then go back to the oyster party. And so they stayed there, and it ended up being a later party than they had intended. And they left, and everybody at the oyster party was trying to get them to not take the boat because Paul insisted on taking the family boat down the Brewfoot River, and they ended up going down. So they were trying to, everybody at the oyster roast was trying to talk them out of going home on the boat. And Paul insisted, nope, I'm not leaving the boat. Everybody said that he had too much pride to leave the boat and have somebody take them home. So they all loaded back up on the boat. And on the way home at midnight, Paul wants to stop at some bar on the river on the way home. So they stop, and Connor and Paul went into the bar, and everybody else was just outside waiting, and they were all furious with Paul and Connor because it was already midnight and they wanted to go home. And so when Paul and Connor come out, they were both smashed. And word is that Paul was out of his mind drunk, and he should not have been behind a boat wheel. And so they tried to talk Paul into letting Connor or Anthony drive the boat home. And Paul said, no, this is my, and used severe language.
You can use explicit language on our podcast.
I'm not going to say it. So
what did he say?
He said bad words. So he said, no, I'm driving. I'm taking this boat.
Dadgummit, I'm not driving.
Right, exactly.
And so he wouldn't let anybody else drive. And so on the way back, I guess later as Paul drank, he was very obsessive with his drinking, and to the point where people were scared when he got drunk. And then Anthony said in some of the interviews that his hands, he would do stuff with his hands. His fingers would bend backwards and
spirit fingers.
Well, he just did things. And then his eyes got so black that he, they said that he looked like he was going to kill him. Yeah, poltergeist eyes. And so,
okay.
Well, I wouldn't get on a boat with him driving.
Yeah, I know. And so they said that they wish that they wouldn't have, but now it's too late. But so they were on the way back, and Paul would leave the wheel, and somebody would run up there and grab the steering wheel because he would just, he was so drunk he didn't know what the heck he was doing. And so they were all arguing and fighting, and Anthony yelled at all of them and said, you know, be quiet and whatever. And that, so Paul got mad at Morgan and said, why aren't you sticking up for me? And he got right into her face, and she said, why would I stick up for you? You're yelling at everybody, and you're not, you know, you're so drunk and blah, blah, blah. And so they got into a big fight, and he slapped her. Well, then the abuse, she worked at this clothing store, and during their on and off relationship, one day they would be on, one day they would be off, and she would go into work crying, and Mallory would say, you know, you don't have to do this, and it's okay. And she would hug her and say, you're a wonderful person. You don't have to worry. You don't have to listen to him, because he was, you know, such a downer. And when he was drunk, like I said, he was very abusive to her, and she was in love, and what love does, you know, you go back to these abusive relationships and you just don't know when to say no, 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 or stop. And so Connor, when Paul slapped her, said, you know, we know there's no hiding it anymore, because now it's out in the open. He abused her in front of everybody, and before she would hide it so that it didn't come out. But they got into another fight, and Paul got mad and pushed the throttle to full fledge, and so the boat just jerked and took off, and all of a sudden everybody starts screaming, and one of the girls said, oh my gosh, you're gonna hit that bridge. Anthony and Mallory were sitting on the back of the boat on the ice chest. Everybody else was up. When they started, it was Mallory and Morgan out on the ice track, on the ice box where the liquor and stuff were, and they had to get up every time somebody wanted a drink. But Anthony and Mallory were sitting together, and then the rest of them were kind of in different spots up in the front and on the sides. And when the boat hit the bridge, they all went flying. Anthony dislocated. It never did say what he did, but his shoulder, he hurt his shoulder somehow. So I'm assuming that he dislodged his shoulder, and I don't know what else. But he couldn't understand why he come up when they all went flying into the water. When he came up, he swam over to the side. Connor Cook swam to the side, but his front teeth, his bottom teeth were over his top teeth, and he had gouged his, he had a big, huge cut on his chin. And then Morgan had cut her hand where the skin was all up, and she had to have surgery, but her skin was all laid back to her wrist. And then Mallory, they all come up out of the water. They couldn't find Mallory. And they're all shouting, where's Mallory? Where's Mallory? Well, then Anthony jumped back into the water numerous times trying to find her. And Connor, in the meantime, had called 911. And this is really the first time 911 had been called on any of the Murdaughs, because in the previous times that Paul had gotten into trouble, he called his grandfather, Randolph Murdaugh, and he got him out of anything and everything. At one time, him and Mallory went to a party. They were partying after his brother's graduation and from college, and he was drunk again, and she was going to drive, and he said, "Get out of the driver's seat," and he kicked her out of the driver's seat, and he drove. And she thought, oh, okay, I guess he's going to be okay. Well, they took this turn and he rolled his truck. And he called his granddaddy to come and get him.
His granddaddy?
Yep. They called him his granddaddy. And so his granddad. And then he had beer cans throughout his whole truck. And because he was a hunter, he had numerous guns all over. So Granddad came, took all of the guns, loaded them up in his truck, towed the truck home, never called the police, never called 911, nothing. And so that was just one of the numerous times that, but anytime Paul got into trouble, 911 was never called. Granddad come and Alex came and took care of the matters without any incident. They were well known by everybody. They were very prominent people in their town. I'm trying to think of
I think they had a family attorney.
No, they were attorneys. I'm getting to that.
Yeah.
So like grandpa was, dad was,
yeah,
brother
great
was.
grandpa. Yeah.
Granddaddy and great granddaddy.
Yes, it went way back to 1940s. It was 87 years of being things. Help me
As
out.
Reba says, no, don't trust your soul to no backwards Southern lawyer.
Right, exactly.
Right. Anyways, this was the first time 911 had been called.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all, when police officials and everybody come, they were all worried about Mallory. And when it was time for them to go to the hospital, Anthony would not leave. Anthony was the only one that stayed and would not leave. The rest of them ended up going to the hospital because for one, they were in bad shape. Anthony had dislocated his shoulder, and that was pretty much everything. But everybody else was, and Miley, I don't think that Miley got hurt. I'm sure she had to go to the hospital and get observed, but it didn't say anything about her injuries. And so while they were at the hospital, they were saying, Anthony, when the police arrived, said that Paul killed his girlfriend, and he used explicit name. And when the police arrived, Paul was trying to call his grandfather, not worried about Mallory that's drowned in the river, or not worried about anybody that's on the boat that he just hurt. He was worried about calling his grandfather. And he was asking the police officer, "Where's my phone?" And the police officer said, "You threw it over there in the grass." And he said, "I need to borrow your phone. I need to call my granddad." And so he called his granddad, and his granddad and his dad showed up on the scene. But in the meantime, Anthony is just furious with him. Somehow, Paul ended up in his boxer shorts only. He was only in his boxer shorts. That's how drunk he was. He had all of his clothes on, but all of a sudden he didn't have any clothes on but his boxers. And he's worried about, he's trying to call his granddad. And has no concern on them saying, where's Mallory? Where's Mallory? And all of them were diving back into the river trying to find Mal. And then when the ambulance come and said that they had to go, Morgan had said, did they find Mallory yet? And they said, no, honey, they haven't found her yet. And they loaded her up in the ambulance and took her to the hospital. And they went to Buford. They were all at Buford Hospital. And that was right downtown Hamilton, or I'm probably dodging it, but I think it's Hamilton. And so they take Paul, but all of the police that are on the scene never questioned anything about him. He had a
blood alcohol level.
Yep, I'm trying to find it. It was like 4 times more than. It was 0.286, over 3 times the legal limit of operating a motor vehicle. So none of the police asked, anything about it. They never asked him, questioning, and they took him straight to the hospital. And that's how they found out that he had a 0.286, because once he got to the hospital, they drew blood and found out that his alcohol. But he was telling everybody that Connor was driving the boat. And everybody else was saying, when the police arrived, they said who was driving the boat. And of course, Paul was off trying to call his granddad. And they were all saying, Paul was driving the boat. He crashed us into the boat. And then Anthony was screaming at Paul, and he had a smirk on his face and made Anthony really mad because he thought it was funny. He, wasn't himself and thought that, this is, and so when the police arrived at the hospital, I'm blotching this all up. They should have read for word now, but the search party went on, and then Anthony would go home, sleep, and then go right back to the dive site. But why the kids were in the hospital, Morgan's mom was a nurse, and nobody wanted to mess with any of the Murdaughs. And when the nurse come out and Morgan was down getting surgery, the nurse said, "Get your daughter away from Paul. He's bad news." And then somebody else said, and then the nurse came, or the orderly said that to Morgan's mom. And then the nurse came out into the hall and said, "I know I'm not supposed to say this to you, but for nurse to nurse and nurse to mom and mom to mom, I'm telling you, he's bad news. You need to get your daughter away from him and stay away from this family." And so it's sad to think that the Murdaughs thought they were above the law. And everybody in the town that they lived in believed that they knew, and they all knew that the Murdaughs were above the law. Nobody wanted to get messed up or mixed up with any of the Murdaughs. You just didn't get involved. And so
so did they ever find Mallory?
They found Mallory, and of course she had died. But 5 days later they found the body. But in the meantime, Alex and the granddad Randolph which was Paul's granddad, went to the hospital and was trying to manipulate everybody at the hospital and telling them, you know, that it was Connor who was driving the boat. When they arrived at the hospital, the employees at the hospital were saying that Alex and Randolph were trying to manipulate what was happening, and Alex didn't care about Mallory's missing or finding her, because they thought if they found her, if they didn't find her, it would be an unsolved case. No, you know, no body, no case. And so the only finding her and only making sure that no one talked, and they called Connor's dad in and said, we got Connor's back. We got Connor's back. Then Alex had called him into a special meeting, and Connor's dad's going, oh my gosh, you know, I'm in big trouble, because Alex is trying to convince him that Connor was the one that was driving this. And Connor went to his dad and said, they're going to kill me, Dad. So Connor was worried, because he said, I was not driving that boat. And he was adamant that he wasn't driving that boat. But Alex was trying to get him to agree to be in driving that boat so that Paul wasn't going to get in trouble. Mm-hmm. And so Alex told everybody not to talk, not to say anything, shut your mouths. And if they didn't, they wouldn't be able to find out who was really driving the boat. So he went up to Connor as he was going in for surgery, or going for x-rays on his jaw, because he had busted his jaw. And Connor, in any of the interviews, he wanted nothing to do with any of this interviews. And when they said, how do you feel about it now? He goes, we're not going to discuss it, because I think he is still angry with all the stuff that was going on. And I think that Connor was still afraid for his life, that they were going to kill him, because he wouldn't admit that he was driving. He was adamant that he wasn't driving. He told his dad that he was scared that they were going to kill him somehow. And there's reason for him to believe that, because in years, in all the years that the Murdaughs were in charge, and it goes down in his timeline that for 87 years, the Murdaugh family came to represent legal dynasty in the coastal South Carolina area, where they were successful, and the successful generation controlled the local prosecutor's office. But known to the family, had been closely connected to 5 different deaths. So there was 5 different deaths that the Murdaugh family brushed under the carpet. Nobody knew anything about any of these deaths, and I'll get to that as we go. The first one was I'm going to go down this timeline now, because I think that it kind of explains how they were the lead prosecutors. So they were 3 generations as 14th Circuit solicitors, which was the lead prosecutors. They were all lawyers, and they kind of took over Hamilton, and they had a huge law firm, which was known as I'll get that. They were the lead prosecutions for 5 different counties: Allendale, Beaufort, Colton, Hamilton, and Jasper counties. Randolph Murdaugh Sr. was elected to be the 14th Circuit Solicitor, which is considered the lead prosecutor, in office in 1920, and served in this position until his death in 1940. His son, Randolph Jr., then took the position over until he retired in 1986. Murdaugh Jr.'s son, Randolph Murdaugh III, was then elected to the role in 1987 and served through the end of 2005. Murdaugh III's son, which was Alex Murdaugh, worked as the attorney at the law firm Peter Murdaugh Parker Elzoff Dietrich, known as PMPED. And in 2006, then the governor, Mark Stanford, appoints attorney Duffy Stone to serve as the 14th Circuit solicitor, making him the first non-Murdaugh in the position that had been elected 4 times since. And then during this time, their chief financial service from the PMPED confronts Alex about the $792,000 missing funds, and on that night, he called 911 for the death of his son and wife. But in the meantime, during this serving, the first death that came upon that was brushed under the carpet was of Stephen Smith. And on July 8th of 2015, Stephen Smith, a 19-year-old nursing student, was found dead from blunt force trauma on a rural road in Hampton County. The case ruled as a hit and run, but Smith was prominently gay, and in high school, classmates of Alex Murdaugh's oldest son, Buster, witnesses said in interviews that as a part of the original investigation, repeatedly implicated Buster as to having been involved in this relationship with Stephen. But as the case went cold, rumors hinting at the cover-up and possible involvement of one or more members of the Murdaugh family began circulating around the Hampton County area soon after Smith's death. According to Beaufort County, the case reeked inside interference. So the first one, Stephen Smith, it was said in the interviews later that one of the Murdaughs killed him because they didn't want it to get out that, of course, it would ruin their reputation that Buster was involved with a gay man. And so that, went under this thing. SLED announced Smith's death as a murder and not an accident on the highway. No charges or indictments have been issued, Buster was released a statement saying that he denies any involvement. So Buster became, he wanted to be just like his father. He wanted to make the money that his father did. He wanted the lifestyle that his father had. So he wanted it well known that he had no part of anything to do with Stephen Smith. So we don't know who killed Stephen Smith. It's still unsolved. That he, you know, at first it was just a hit and run. But it really wasn't, because when they did autopsies and stuff, it was that it was a hit and run. But then they found out that he had blunt trauma to the head, and the way he was laying in the road, it was all, he still had his shoes on. You know, it was like he was laid out there. He was brutally beaten and then put on the road, or, you know, is what. That's
it looked like he ran out of gas and was walking to get gas and got hit by a hit and run.
Right.
Like a car.
But they showed his body wouldn't be laying in the middle of the road, and the injuries didn't match.
Right. And so then in 2000, on February 2nd, 2018, Gloria Statterfield, their housekeeper, longtime housekeeper and nanny for Paul, which was, like I said, more than just a nanny to Paul. He was more like a mom. And during some of the interviews, it was said that Paul, the only picture that Paul had in his billfold was of Gloria. So he had no other pictures, only Gloria. So he thought highly of Gloria. Gloria thought highly of him. He thought of her as a mom. And then his own mother, Maggie, which Maggie doted on the eldest son, Buster. When he graduated, it was, you know, everything was all Buster. Gloria suffered head injuries, and when 911 was called, it said that she had fallen down the front steps of their home at the Moseley estate, which was where Paul and Anthony and the boys spent most of their time, because that's where all the hunting, the boating, and it was on the outskirts of Hamilton, and it was over 1,000 acres. So it was huge. And the house was way, way back off the road. And so when 911 arrived at the family's home at the Moseley estate, they had said she had fallen down. The dogs had, and at the Moseley home, the dogs, they had hunting dogs. So it was like people that owned horse barns. It was kennels of dogs. I mean, it's just a huge kennel, and they all had, it was beautiful stalls and, you know, elaborate casings around them. But they said that the dogs tripped her coming up, and she had said when she come through the gates, she had talked to the gardener and said hello, and he had said that she, of course, had her bag of McDonald's and her drink, and she walked up the steps, and he, you know, after he had said hello, he never seen her, so he didn't see her fall down the steps or anything else. It was just hearsay from Maggie saying that she had fallen down the steps. She had complications. She stayed in the hospital and was had a stroke, and it had been reported as a trip and fall accident. But the sad thing was there was no coroners notified, no autopsy was performed, and on the death certificate, it was noted as natural causes, and she died February 26th, 2018. So she was in the hospital for 16 days, unconscious, didn't know her sons. She had 2 sons. And Alex Murdaugh, Paul's dad, represented her, or, he wanted to be, he went in and said that he was Morgan's legal representation, and he wanted to go in while she was in surgery. And somehow, I don't understand this, when she was having surgery, Granddad Randolph was able to go into the surgery while she was in surgery, and Morgan seen Alex tapping at the window, and she told the head nurse, do not whatsoever let that man in this room. And so Alex was never allowed in that room. Well, Alex represented Gloria and took out a claim on the Murcell home and ended up collecting all that insurance money and never, gave it to her sons. And somebody said it come out that the case had won a huge amount of money, and both of the sons said, did you get any money? And the other son said, no, I didn't get any money. Did you get any money? And so that's how it all come about, that Alex took out a claim on Gloria falling down the steps and
of his house,
at his house, and scammed the insurance and frauded the insurance. And that wasn't the first time. I mean, he had multiple claims, and Alex, and according to multiple incidents, Alex Murdaugh, Chad Westendorf, and attorney Corey Fleming conspired to steal her money, which was $4 million in insurance policy settlement. The scam worked by diverting the payout to Alex's bank account and then not notifying the Statterfields that the life insurance settlement had occurred. It involved forgery. Murdaugh's law firm, the PMPED, and Palomento State Bank found this out, and the Statterfield sons, represented by malpractice attorney Eric Bland, were ultimately able to recover more than $6.5 million during the lawsuit. And on September 15th, 2021, the attorneys reopened the case and got permission to exhume Gloria's body because Alex didn't find out, he didn't have any autopsies. So the sons were really concerned that they did something to their mother because they exhumed her body. But that's still under investigation because it's still not out what has come about that. And then Paul, of course, was charged February the 19th of 2019 for the, it wasn't even for murder. It was for felonies following the death of Mallory in the boating accident, and for the blood alcohol level of the one that it was. And then when they crashed into the bridge, Paul was never given a sobriety test, or he wasn't taken to jail. He wasn't booked. He wasn't handcuffed. This led speculation that he was receiving special treatment owing to his family's connections to everybody that lived in Hampton. The judge denied a prosecutorial request that he wear an alcohol monitor because of who he was. And the court documents for the Beaches family implicated that Alex and Buster, in providing alcohol, Alex and Buster provided alcohol to the underage Paul and all of his friends. And on September 2021, SLED was investigating the allegations that the police may have been pursued not to charge Paul and the family of Connor Cook, another of the teens aboard the boat during the incident, filed a lawsuit claiming that Alex had encouraged the Cook family to retain a longtime lawyer friend. So Connor's dad and Alex's dad were friends in school. So Alex thought that he could talk Connor's dad into just forgiving all of this and kind of hush hush, no, don't say anything. And then they all got kind of scared and knew that the Murdaughs had way too much connection, and they were going to the Murdaughs were going to throw everybody under the bus. So they kind of all found this out when they realized that they didn't care about what happened to Mallory. They just cared about their family heritage and being the elite people that they thought that they were. The police told Connor was driving the boat, and the other 5 passengers told police that Paul was driving the boat. So Paul told the police that Connor was driving it, and then, of course, in the records, it was that Paul was driving the boat. The wrongful death cause began unraveling of Alex Murdaugh in the criminal enterprise and exposing financial information that led to the jury to believe that Murdaugh allegedly financed wrongdoing in the days before killing his wife and his son. Because of all of this coming out, they found out that Alex had done all of these illegal and fraudulent things on all of these people. Now, because of all of this coming out, they're finding out that Alex spent billions of dollars on drugs and alcohol, and he was addicted, and they kind of just brushed it under the table. And then after he killed his wife and son, he told the officers that he was visiting his ailing mother. He called 911. 2021 sheriff's found out about the $792 missing funds. Alex tells the officers on the scene after he called 911 that he was visiting with his ailing mother and returned to find his wife and son dead. On June 10th, Randolph Murdaugh III dies peacefully in his home at age 81. June 15th, SLED released information about the killing of Alex's wife and son. June 17th, John and Randy, brothers of Alex, believed that their brother would not kill Maggie or his son. On June 22nd, they reopened the case of Stephen Smith and from the 2015 in Hamilton County. And because of the information gathered while investigating the deaths of Maggie and Paul, that's why they opened the Stevens case, or Stephen Smith's case again. Alex and son Buster announced $100,000 reward information leading to the conviction of the person responsible for killing Maggie and Paul. And then July 22nd, release of a 911 call by Alex on August the 11th, SLED sharply questioned and intimidates that he is a suspect, which he denies killing Maggie or his son. On September the 3rd in 2021, Alex resigns from the law firm PMPED, and then September 4th, Alex calls 911, reports that he was shot on the road in Hampton County. He was taken to the hospital, and he had hired his cousin, which was his drug dealer, to shoot him. So he did the same thing as what they reported that Stephen Smith had stopped on the side of the road, but Stephen had run out of gas, but Alex had said that he was fixing his spare tire and some guy come up to him and shot him in the back of the head. Come to find out, it was his drug dealer, which was his cousin. And he was going to get off of that scam because he was going to file a lawsuit. And then on September the 6th, Alex releases statements through his attorney, Dick Harpootlian, that he was resigning from the firm and that he was entering his rehab, or going to attempt to enter rehab. On September the 7th, his law firm, PMPED, said that Alex resigned after he violates inappropriate fundings. September the 8th, Alex's license to practice law was suspended. March 2nd, after 3 hours of deliberation, Alex was finally convicted of all 4 charges, 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of possession of a weapon and violent crimes. Back to the boating incident. This was all of the timeline of all of this coming out after, but on the scene of the boating accident, there were 20 different law enforcements, and none of them questioned Paul. Michael Bach, who was assigned by the DNR to be the lead investigator of this investigation that went on, he was the one that was down there. And he was a buddy, a friend of Alex's. And so he wouldn't let anything out. Anthony Cook told him that Paul killed, which Anthony told Michael Brock that Paul killed my girlfriend, and in not so many nice words. But when they went back through the audio, all of that was taken out. None of that was in any of the transcript. And so a lot of the stuff that was said down on the docks where the accident had happened was some somehow deleted out of the transcriptions or transcripts of all of the things. And then Michael Paul Thomas, who was a very known DNR agent and got Paul out of various incidents on all of these, accidents that had happened, of him turning over his car, getting into car accidents, getting pulled over, all of the different things that he might have gotten in trouble for. Paul Thomas or Michael Thomas got him out. And he was the best friend of John Marvin Murdaugh, which was Alex's brother. So Michael Paul Thomas was John Marvin's Murdaugh's best friend. And he was Alex's, and John Marvin was Alex's brother. John had, when the investigation, Alex called, or Randolph called John Marvin, and John Marvin made numerous calls to Michael Paul Thomas. Michael Paul Thomas also called Austin Price, who was the officer at the hospital trying to interview all of the kids. And it also indicated that John Marvin took the trailer to the boat and was at the scene. And I don't know that it didn't say, they said that they didn't know if he took the boat, but his intentions were to get the boat out of the scene. And I don't know if he was not able to do that, but it was noted that John Marvin was seen at the scene down when the accident had taken place. Morgan tried telling his mom, Maggie, that, this was during the time that they were fighting back and forth, that the relationships were from two different worlds, and Paul's parents took Morgan to the Kentucky Derby, Final Fours. So they lived a whole different world than Morgan. And Morgan had tried to tell Maggie that Paul's drinking was getting out of control. And she blew it off and tried to tell her that, this is none of your concern. Don't worry about it. And she thought that Maggie would put him in rehab, but no, there was no getting anybody in rehab. They just kind of washed everything under the bridge. They just took care of it themselves. Like I said, they were attorneys. They knew people from high places, and everybody protected the Murdaughs. When they with all the stuff at the scene, everybody, all the parents started saying, people were saying nobody wanted to mess with the Murdaugh's family. They had all kinds of connections. And then why were 5 bodies killed and somehow were connected to this very frightening, and it was very frightening to be that above the law. So how can they allow this family to be that above the law and not have to pay any kind of consequences is what I want to know.
They were the law. That's the problem, is that they were the lawyers and the judges, and they were making these rules.
Yes, and that's what everybody come to realize at the very end, that they were above the law and they made the law. And that's pretty sad. That's pretty sad.
And so was anybody ever held accountable for anything?
No, nobody was held accountable. But now Alex is being accountable at the very end because of all of this being swept underneath. It come down to Alex pretty much. I think Alex and Randolph pretty much did all of the damage, but Randolph died, and then Paul killed his son and his wife. And I think that Alex killed Paul because of the trouble and all of this coming out. And it got to be more than what they could
handle.
And it brought out shame to the family. So.
And Alex was charged with their murders.
Yes, and he was charged. And that's what I said in 2023 on March.
Just recently within the last months.
Yeah. March 23
trial. That was a live trial.
Yeah. So, it finally came to a halt. But for all of that,
far too long.
Yeah, for all of that to go on that long, and for a death to bring it out, and they weren't even mournful of the death, and that's what's so sad, is they didn't care that their son had killed somebody. They were trying to cover it up, and that's a shame.
Yeah. And so, Buddy,
and the 5 other friends have to live with this for the rest of their lives because they participated in the drinking and the partying, and they knew that Paul was out of control when he drank, and to keep allowing him to drink or going with him to all these parties and letting him get that drunk. And Morgan's dad had said in one of the interviews that he was hiding something. And I really think, he said, you drink for a reason, and to drink like he did, he's hiding something. And I really think he thought that he was looked down on in the family because he didn't want to be a lawyer. He was a black sheep of the family. I think that he drank to relieve his pain that his mom and dad instilled on him. And then allowing them, the lifestyle that they lived, they taught him that he was above the law. And during the boat ride to the oyster roast, Paul had gotten into a fight with Mallory and said that what was sad was that her dad didn't make enough money to support his family. And so, that devastated her. And, she was trying to be like they were. Mm-hmm. She thought that they were the best because they had all this money and they could go places, and they they went on trips and they took her on trips, and when they were at Buster's graduation, they were staying at a hotel, and he got mad at Mallory and was very abusive, and that's what I think really broke up the relationship. And then that's why she didn't want to go on that oyster roast, because she was trying to break off all ties, and she had went to work and told Mallory that what he had done. He had gotten on top of her and punched her in the knee and left bruises, and they said, no one should have to put up with that kind of a relationship. And I think that was the last straw. And then they all went on that trip, and they all had second thoughts. Not one of them wanted to go. Something was telling them not to go, and if they would have all stayed home, it wouldn't have happened. But so something was telling them not to go. It's a sad.
Yeah, it's the downfall of a family.
Yeah, it really was.
Right.
Probably should have happened. Should be a downfall of a family. It sucks that it took out 5 different people. 5 lives had to die for it. But.
And just to make their family. I mean, in 2015, if they would have investigated it more and they didn't have the connections, it would have unraveled back then, and none of the rest of the lives would have been paying for this.
Right.
And then maybe Paul would have gotten into rehab, or maybe he could have changed his life. I mean, there's so many things that could have changed to make this different, but it didn't.
Right.
Everybody, and it was all because of the granddad that enabled them.
Let's wrap this up, and please, Jesse, what do you want to tell the people?
Like, share, and subscribe.
Like, share.
And if you want to write to us, give us some comments or ask us questions, give us topics, share your thoughts with us at thefamilyschoolofthought@gmail.com.
Awesome. Okay, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Alexa played the Family School of Thought.
But they didn't find her body for 5 days. And they
we can
I know. Just
I
because
like Dad muted his mic.
Just realized that. I was like, why? Who's making all that noise? And I look up, and Dad has somehow muted his own mic, but then goes into the room that Mom is talking in and makes all the noise.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll edit that out.
Yeah. Okay, good.